Hey everybody, and welcome to the Deep Dive. You know how much we love to explore practical spirituality around here, and today is no different. We're diving into this Murley document, and I think you're really going to enjoy this one.
Sounds good.
Think less, airy-fairy stuff, and more like down-to-earth wisdom you can actually put to use in your life.
I like it.
The core concept we're looking at today is all about finding that balance between your inner world, that spiritual growth we're always talking about, and your outer responsibilities. All the things are on our plates, right? It's like managing a life portfolio or something.
Exactly. And that's what makes this Murley document so relevant, right? It acknowledges that inner growth isn't something separate from our daily lives. It's about figuring out how to weave them together.
Which I think we can all agree is easier said than done.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, we all want to be more mindful and present, but then work deadlines hit us and family stuff comes up, the world just doesn't stop. So how do we actually make that inner peace thing stick when life gets crazy?
Right. Well, from today's Murley document, one of the first things that really jumps out is this idea of consistent inner remembrance. And it's not about trying to find like huge chunks of time for meditation or anything like that. It's about those little mini breaks you give your mind throughout the day.
Okay, so even when you're swamped, you're still squeezing in a minute or two here and there to just breathe and reset.
Yeah, precisely. Think of it like a quick system reboot for your brain. You're not trying to become a monk or anything, just taking small steps to shift your mindset and refresh.
Okay, so that makes sense. And those small tweaks really can have a ripple effect on everything else you do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it. Even just 60 seconds of deep breathing can totally change your energy when you're feeling super stressed. Now, imagine applying that throughout your day, at work, at home, during a tense family dinner.
I'm starting to see how powerful those little moments can be.
It can make a world of difference.
Now, what about building that long-term resilience? We're so conditioned to want quick fixes for everything.
Instant gratification.
Yeah. But when it comes to inner growth, it's a different kind of process, right?
For sure. And that's where this Murley documents concept of a hospital for the soul comes in. It's recognizing that this is a journey, not a quick fix. It's about building inner strength over time.
So instead of waiting for problems to pop up and then try to treat them, you're saying we should be proactively building our inner immune system. I love that.
It's a great analogy, right? Because it is similar to physical health. You don't run a marathon after just one gym session. It takes consistent effort over time. And the same goes for spiritual practice. Even just a few minutes of reflection here and there can make a huge difference in helping you navigate those inevitable emotional storms and come out stronger on the other side.
All right, so we've got these inner practices that we're trying to cultivate, but how do you actually balance that with jobs and family and finances, all that outer stuff that just doesn't go away?
Right. The Murley document actually uses this really clever analogy for that. It talks about making auto deductions for your spiritual savings account.
I like that.
So you're not neglecting your bills or your outer responsibilities or anything like that, but you're also consistently making those deposits into your inner well-being.
So it's not an either-or situation. It's about finding that balance.
Right. It's like, how you automate your savings for retirement or whatever. And these deductions can be pretty small, 5 minutes of meditation before you start your workday, a walk during your lunch break, or even simply choosing to respond patiently instead of freaking out when things get a little heated.
It's all about the little things adding up over time. I love that. Now, there's also this idea in today's Murley document about this concept of being rupan basant, giving jewels of wisdom instead of, stones of hurtful words.
Oh, that's a beautiful teaching.
Yeah, tell me about that.
It's about recognizing the power of our language, the impact our words have on others. Just like throwing stones can hurt someone, using harsh words can escalate conflict and create negativity, but offering those jewels of wisdom, those kind words, it's like offering encouragement and understanding.
And that shift can totally change the atmosphere.
Absolutely. And it goes for every situation, not just at home, right? Like at work or even just casual conversations.
It makes you really think about the energy you're putting out there.
Yeah, for sure.
And this leads perfectly into this next concept from the Murley document being a stick for the blind, leading by example but gently.
Yeah, it's like imagine a mentor who's helping someone navigate a new job, right? They're not bossing them around or anything. They're sharing their experience and offering support and guidance.
So you're a source of stability for others, and in that process, you're strengthening your own sense of purpose, too.
Exactly. It's a win-win. And speaking of purpose, the Murley document also talks about this principle of elevated effort, elevated fortune.
Meaning the more effort you put in, the higher your status becomes. But it's not just about material success, right?
No, not at all. It applies to inner growth as well. Consistent effort in your spiritual practice that leads to a greater sense of peace and confidence, just like working hard at your job can lead to promotions and raises. It's about taking ownership of your journey, not just waiting for luck to strike.
So it's all connected. Your inner and outer efforts are what determine your overall fortune, your sense of fulfillment in life.
Exactly. It's a holistic approach. Now, here's a thought-provoking idea from the Murley document. When you remain genuinely content and happy, others praise you naturally and you spread goodwill.
So basically, being happy makes people like you more.
Well, it's not quite that simple, but it's true that we're naturally drawn to people who radiate joy and positivity. It's magnetic.
And it's not about faking it. It's about putting in the inner work to actually become that person.
Exactly, and that attracts good things back to you. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, in this busy world we live in, finding that inner peace often means carving out some quiet time for yourself. The Murley document really emphasizes the importance of solitude and concentration.
Which is so hard these days. I mean, we're constantly bombarded with distraction.
Oh, I know. It's like our brains never get a break.
So how do you even begin to create that space for yourself when it feels like the world is screaming at you 24/7?
It really comes down to setting boundaries. Think about it like this. If you were at the gym, working out or meditating, you wouldn't want your phone constantly buzzing with notifications, right?
Totally.
It's the same with your mental space. Too much external noise prevents you from going deep within. So even just taking 10 minutes each day to disconnect from everything, to just be present with yourself, it can be transformative.
A little digital detox to reset and recharge. Makes sense.
It helps you focus, handle pressure better. It's like building that mental muscle to deal with all the chaos of daily life.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground already. We've got mini mindfulness breaks, building long-term resilience, balancing those inner and outer responsibilities. What else stands out to you from this Murley document?
You know, what's really fascinating to me is how all of these concepts tie together so beautifully. It's not just a random list of tips. It's like this whole approach to living a more fulfilling life internally and externally.
Yeah, and I think what's so powerful about these teachings is that they're accessible to everyone. It doesn't matter what your background is or what you believe in. These are universal principles that can help anyone live a happier, more meaningful life.
Couldn't agree more.
Now, before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, what's resonating most with you so far? What's one thing you're going to try to implement in your own life?
I think for me, it's that idea of making those auto deductions for my spiritual savings account. I really like that analogy. It's a good reminder to prioritize my inner well-being, even when things get crazy.
That's great. I love it. And for me, I'm really going to focus on being more mindful with my speech, choosing to offering encouragement and understanding instead of criticism and negativity. What about you listening? What's one thing you're going to take away from this Murley document?
Take a moment to think about that. We'll be right back with even more insights in just a minute. Welcome back, everyone. We're continuing our deep dive into this Murley document, exploring these practical teachings about how to really balance our inner growth with all of those, everyday responsibilities.
Yeah, and it's been amazing to see how these concepts, they seem simple on the surface, but they can really shift your perspective in powerful ways. But I think, as we were saying before, finding that inner peace amidst all the outer chaos, it's a real challenge, right?
It's definitely an ongoing process. And from today's Murley document, I think one of the most powerful practices for really achieving that inner peace is, well, it's the practice of silence.
The power of silence. We hear about it all the time, but actually doing it in our constantly connected world.
Right. It's like we're bombarded with information, nonstop, notifications, news, you name it. Minds just don't get a moment to rest.
So how do we even begin to cultivate silence when it feels like the world is screaming at us 24/7?
Well, the Murley document emphasizes the importance of consciously disconnecting from the outer world, taking those breaks, turning off phones, stepping away from screens, creating that space where you're not being constantly bombarded by demands and input.
It's like giving your mind permission to just be without that pressure to do or achieve or consume.
Exactly. And, it doesn't have to be formal meditation or anything like that. It could be a quiet walk in nature, a few minutes of just focusing on your breath, or simply sitting in silence and observing your thoughts and feelings without judging them.
So it's about finding what works for you, what helps you create that inner stillness.
Yeah, and from that place of stillness, you can tap into so much wisdom and creativity and peace. It's always there, but it's like we need to quiet the noise to be able to access it.
Silencing the noise of the world so you can hear the whispers of your own heart. I love that.
It's beautiful, isn't it? And those whispers, they hold the key to unlocking our true potential, to living a life that feels aligned with our deepest values.
So it's not just about finding peace and quiet for its own sake, but it's about accessing a deeper level of wisdom and guidance. It's about connecting with that inner compass that's always pointing us in the right direction.
And the more we practice that, the more we cultivate that inner stillness, the more we connect with ourselves, and the more we're able to live in a way that feels authentic and aligned, you know?
Yeah, it's like this beautiful cycle. The more you connect with yourself, the more you live authentically, and the more you attract positive experiences into your life.
And it all starts with creating that space for silence. Now, speaking of navigating life and those responsibilities, the Murley document also talks about this concept of elevated effort, elevated fortune. And I think it ties in really nicely with what we were just talking about.
Oh, tell me more about that. I love that idea.
It's about recognizing that the effort you put in, both in your inner world and your outer world, it determines the quality of your life. So it's not about luck, it's about taking ownership.
I think we often associate the word fortune with external things like money or success. But what this teaching is saying is it's also about that internal sense of fulfillment, right? Like living a life that feels meaningful and aligned with your values.
Exactly. It's about showing up fully in all areas of your life, whether it's your career, your relationships, or your spiritual practice.
So putting in that consistent effort leads to a greater sense of fortune and a greater sense of being on the right path, no matter what that path looks like for you.
Absolutely. The Murley document uses a really great analogy of career advancement. It's like, just as putting in consistent effort at work can lead to promotions or raises, consistent effort in your inner work leads you greater peace and confidence, you know?
I love that analogy.
It's about showing up consistently for yourself and trusting that the effort will bear fruit, both internally and externally. Now, speaking of results, there's another teaching in the Murley document that I find super intriguing, and it says, when you remain genuinely content and happy, others praise you naturally and you spread goodwill.
Happiness is a calling card. I'm into that.
It's true, isn't it? We're all drawn to people who just radiate that genuine joy and positivity. It's magnetic. And it's not about pretending or faking it. It's about putting in the work to cultivate that inner state of contentment. And that's what attracts those positive experiences back to you.
So it's not just about feeling good for yourself. It's about creating that ripple effect. It's about spreading goodwill to others.
Absolutely. And, it all starts with that inner work, with those small, consistent practices that we keep talking about that help you cultivate a more positive and joyful outlook on life. Now, we've talked about the power of silence, the importance of mindful speech, the power of consistent effort. What else does this Murley document offer us in terms of practical wisdom?
That's a great question. There's so much to unpack here. One concept that really stands out to me is this idea of being a stick for the blind. Now, in our culture, which is so focused on individual achievement, this might seem a little counterintuitive, but it's such a powerful teaching.
You're right. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected and that we have a responsibility to help each other along the way. It's about gently guiding others towards clarity, especially when they're feeling lost or confused.
And it's not about telling people what to do or having all the answers. It's about offering support and guidance based on your own experience.
Think about a mentor who's helping someone navigate a new job, or a friend who offers a listening ear during a tough time. They're not trying to fix the problem, but they're there to offer that support and perspective.
It's about holding space for someone. And by doing that, by being that stick for the blind, you're not only helping them find their way, but you're also reinforcing your own sense of purpose and direction.
And it all comes back to that idea of balance, right? We're not just focusing on our own individual growth, but we're extending that outwards to help others grow and evolve as well. It's this beautiful cycle of giving and receiving.
I love that. Okay, so before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, let's just take a moment to recap what we've learned so far from this Murley document, because we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we have. So we started out by exploring the concept of balancing our inner and outer world, creating that well-rounded life portfolio that we were talking about earlier.
We talked about weaving in those little mini mindfulness breaks throughout the day, even when things feel super hectic.
We learned about proactively building our inner strength and resilience through those consistent spiritual practices, no matter how small they may seem.
And we explored that great concept of making auto deductions for our spiritual savings account, making sure we're investing in our well-being right alongside those worldly duties.
We also discovered the incredible power of positive and uplifting speech, choosing to offer those jewels of wisdom instead of those, hurtful words that can sometimes slip out.
Right, and then we delved into this powerful idea of being a stick for the blind, gently guiding others towards greater understanding and clarity. We're all in this together, right?
Absolutely. And of course, we can't forget about the concept of elevated effort, elevated fortune, recognizing that the effort we put in, both internally and externally, that's what truly shakes our lives.
And that leads to that incredible sense of fulfillment that we're all searching for. And lastly, we explored that idea of happiness as a calling card, recognizing that when you cultivate genuine contentment and joy, it naturally radiates outward and it attracts those positive experiences right back to you. So much good stuff.
It's amazing how these teachings build on each other. And in the final part of our deep dive, we're going to explore some practical tips for actually integrating these teachings into our everyday lives. How do we actually put all this wisdom into practice? Stay tuned.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive, everybody. I hope you had a chance to really soak in all those incredible insights from this Murley document. I know I have. It's been an amazing journey so far. And in this final part, let's dive into the practical side of things.
Sounds good.
We've been talking about all these profound concepts, balancing our inner and outer worlds, cultivating mindfulness, all that good stuff. But how do we actually make it happen in our everyday lives? You know, the rubber meets the road kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one thing to understand these teachings intellectually, but integrating them into our busy lives, that's the real challenge, right?
It is. So let's get specific. What are some concrete steps we can take to start putting these teachings into practice, starting today? Like, for example, those mini mindfulness breaks we were talking about earlier. How do we actually make time for those when we're juggling a million things?
Well, one really simple but effective strategy is to use reminders. Like setting little mindfulness alarms on your phone or computer.
Oh, I like that. So every hour or so, you get a little nudge to take a minute and breathe.
Exactly. Just a little prompt to step out of that autopilot mode and reconnect with yourself. And you can customize it too. Step outside for some fresh air, listen to a quick song, do some stretches, whatever helps you reset.
So it becomes a non-negotiable part of your day.
Exactly. And what about anchoring those mindfulness breaks to things you already do? Habits you have throughout the day.
Oh, interesting. What do you mean by that?
Well, think about things you do on autopilot, like brushing your teeth, having your morning coffee, your commute to work.
Oh, okay, I see where you're going with this. Instead of just going through the motions, you turn those activities into opportunities for mindfulness.
Exactly. So while you're brushing your teeth, pay attention to the sensations, the taste of the toothpaste, the feeling of the water. Or during your commute, practice mindful listening to the sounds around you.
Turning everyday activities into little mindfulness exercises. That's so clever. All right, what about that whole reprobation concept we talked about? Giving jewels of wisdom instead of stones of hurtful words. Any practical tips for putting that into practice?
Yeah, I think it starts with awareness, just paying attention to your thoughts and words throughout the day. What kind of language are you using, both to yourself and to others?
But without judgment, right? It's not about beating ourselves up. It's about just noticing the patterns.
Exactly. And if you catch yourself in negative self-talk, try to challenge those thoughts and replace them with something more positive and encouraging. And the same goes for how you talk to others.
So, like, if you're about to criticize someone, just pause for a second and ask yourself, is there a more constructive way to say this? Or even, is it even necessary to say anything at all?
Right. It's about choosing our words wisely because they really do have power. They impact the people around us and our own inner state, too.
Words are magic. Now, this one's tough for a lot of people, myself included, making time for silence and solitude. In today's world, it feels almost impossible sometimes.
It does, but it's so important for our well-being. And it really comes down to setting boundaries. Prioritizing your mental and emotional health sometimes means saying no to things so you can say yes to that quiet time.
So carving out that space in your schedule, even if it's just 30 minutes in the morning, or a walk during your lunch break, or disconnecting from technology an hour before bed, whatever works for you.
Exactly. It's about creating those little pockets of sacred space where you can just unplug from the demands of the world and recharge.
Love that. And from that space, like you were saying earlier, you can tap into so much wisdom and clarity. Now, one last teaching from the Murley document that really resonated with me was the idea of leading by example being a stick for the blind.
Yes. It's such a beautiful concept. It's a reminder that our actions often speak louder than words.
Totally. We can talk all day about these teachings, but it's about embodying them, living them out in our everyday lives.
Showing up with kindness and compassion and integrity in all our interactions, being that example that inspires others to do the same.
Creating that ripple effect of positivity.
And that's how we start to make real change in the world from the inside out.
Beautiful said. Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into this Murley document. What an incredible journey it's been. I feel so inspired and equipped with all these practical tools and insights to navigate life's challenges with more grace and ease. What about you?
Oh, me too. Absolutely. It's been such a rich and rewarding exploration. And, I think it's important to remember that the journey to inner peace and fulfillment, it's ongoing. It's not about reaching some perfect destination.
It's about enjoying the process.
Yes. And trusting that those small, consistent choices we make each day, Those are the things that truly matter. And that we're not alone in this journey. There's so much support out there, books, podcasts, teachers, communities,
So keep exploring, keep learning, keep growing.
and keep shining your light.
That's a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time.